January 13th. The Duce had a terrible cold, but at the same time he is very much concerned about the preparation of the militia for the parade of February 1st. He spends many a half hour at the window of his office, concealed behind the blue curtains, looking at the movements of the various units. It was he who chose the band leader's baton, and in person he teaches the movement to be made. He is a strong believer that in the armed forces it is the form that determines the substance as well. He says that 1,400,000,000 men were required in order to defeat 60 million Germans. The reason being that the rigid Prussian military training has made the soldiers invincible. Very often he accuses the king of having diminished the physical prestige of our army in order to harmonize it with its own unhappy physique.
This comes from the diaries of Ciano, Mussolini's son-in-law. Throughout his diaries he documents the build-up to the war and the eventual war itself, but he never saw the end of it. He was among the members of the Grand Council of Fascism that forced Mussolini's ousting and subsequent arrest, but the Germans helped Mussolini come back to power. So Ciano proceeded to flee to Germany but was arrested, and under German pressure, he was sentenced to death. So it's a bit of a miracle that these diaries even survived, as Ciano's wife, Mussolini's daughter, strapped them to her waist and made the trek from Italy into neutral Switzerland. But for us today, luckily keeping yourself and your browsing safe is easier than ever thanks to ExpressVPN. They reroute 100% of your network's traffic through secure encrypted servers, so you're safe from government spies and even advertising agencies collecting your data and the likes. But if you're not worried about lack of privacy, well, there's an added bonus, as you can connect to a server in any country in the world. This means you can stream movies only available on Netflix abroad, or access websites that have otherwise been banned. So you can pick to connect to a server in up to 94 countries and browse the internet as if you were actually there. This is therefore perfect if you happen to be in a country that has a tendency to block websites, like PayPal in Turkey, or practically anything in China. Plus, as ExpressVPN only invests in premium servers, this means you can connect, stream and browse at higher speeds than all the competitors, and connecting to these servers is super simple and can be done in just one click. Plus, if you do need a hand in using the app, well, there's 24/7 customer support available as well. So if you want to keep your browsing safe or connect to the internet around the world, go to the link in the description and get your first 3 months free. And rest assured that you're making a good decision, as ExpressVPN has been rated the #1 VPN provider by CNET, The Verge and many more. But for now, let's get back to Ciano. In this next section, he'll be detailing the Italians' reactions to the German annexation of Czechoslovakia, their hesitations over the alliance, and their rather rushed decision to take Albania.
March 15th. Events are precipitated during the night. German troops began their occupation of Bohemia. The thing is serious, especially since Hitler has assured everyone that he did not want to annex one single Czech. The Führer sends word that he acted because the Czechs would not immobilize their military forces, because they were continuing to keep their contacts with the Russians, and because they mistreated Germans. Such pretexts may be good for Goebbels' propaganda, but they should not use them when talking with us. But Hitler advises Mussolini that if he intends to undertake an action in grand style, it is better to wait a couple of years when the available Prussian divisions will be 100. The Duce reacted, asserting that in case of war with France, we should fight alone without asking Germany for a single man. It is useless to deny that all this concerns and humiliates the Italian people. It is necessary to give them a satisfaction and compensation. Albania. I spoke about it to the Duce. He authorized me to telegraph to Giacomoni, asking him to prepare local revolts, and he personally ordered the navy to hold ready the 2nd Squadron at Taranto. I returned to the Duce. I found him unhappy. He did not wish to give the news to the press. The Italians would laugh at me. Every time Hitler occupies a country, he sends me a message. He continued to talk about Albania, but he has not yet made a decision. Some doubt, which he has not yet revealed to me, disturbs his mind. He is fully aware of the hostile reaction of the Italian people, but he affirms that we must take the German trick with good grace. Even the occupation of Albania could not, in his opinion, counterbalance in world public opinion the incorporation into the Reich one of the richest territories of the world, such as Bohemia. I am convinced that our going into Albania would have raised the morale of our country, would have been an effective result of the Axis, after which we would have re-examined our policy with regard to Germany, whose hegemony begins to take on a disturbing form. March 17th. World opinion is very depressing. From all the capitals, disturbing telegrams have arrived. Even in Hungary, there is no celebration on account of the occupation of Ruthenia. Worse things are feared. I saw some diplomats, the ambassadors from Belgium and the United States. They expressed to me their concern about the future in their indignation against Berlin. I confess that it's not easy for me to find any justification for the German action. I allowed them to infer that we were in agreement, or had at least been informed, but it is such a nuisance to lie. The Duce was anxious and gloomy. It was the first time that I had seen him thus. Even at the time of the Anschluss, he had shown greater indifference. He is preoccupied by the Croatian problem. He is afraid that Maček may proclaim independence and put himself under German protection. He says in such a case these are the only alternatives, either to fire the first shot against Germany or to be swept away by a revolution which the fascists themselves will bring about. No one would tolerate the sight of a swastika in the Adriatic. He is thinking also of the possibility of delaying the sending of troops to Libya, coming to an agreement with France through London, but later he abandons the idea. Upon my advice, he decided to discuss the Croatian problem with the Germans. May 15th. I returned to Rome. The Yugoslav visit went well, even though nothing new was decided. The Turkish threat is what particularly concerns Belgrade. We must take advantage of this psychological condition to pull the Yugoslav more and more into the orbit of the Axis. Conversation with the Polish ambassador. He believes war is inevitable. After our official conversation was finished, we spoke as friend to friend and I advised him to be very moderate. Whatever happens, Poland will pay the price of the conflict, because there are two alternatives. Either the Axis wins and Germany will absorb Poland, or the Axis loses and Poland becomes a province of Bolshevik Russia. No Franco-British help is possible, at least at the beginning of the war. Poland would be soon reduced to a heap of rubble.
So here you can see the Italians, or at least Ciano, were still open to discussions with the Polish. Plus their movements in Yugoslavia were sometimes contradictory, as they sometimes favoured Croatian independence and sometimes hoped to pull a united Yugoslavia into their sphere of influence. Well, in this next section, he will detail meetings with the Germans, which again will show that nobody really had a united goal very close to the beginning of the war. And the Italians were also very unsure of their alliance with the Germans. In fact, in this next section, he'll even meet with the Spanish ambassadors in June 1939 and discuss their sort of mutual distrust of Hitler. So, in short, the Italian entry into World War II was never set in stone.
May 21st, 1939. I arrive in Berlin. There are great demonstrations, clearly spontaneous in their warmth. My first discussion is with Ribbentrop. He repeats Germany's interest in and an intention to ensure for itself a long period of peace, at least 3 years. He dwells on the desirability of binding Japan to our system. He maintains Russia is too weak to give much help to the Western democracies, even if she should take her stand with them. Finally, I told to him about Yugoslavia. I say that an internal revolt in Croatia will not leave us indifferent. Ribbentrop approves, but I can see that he really prefers to maintain the Yugoslav status quo. Himmler, on the other hand, tells me definitely that we must hurry and establish our protectorate over Croatia. We repeat more or less the same discussion with the Führer. He confirms that fact that Mediterranean policy will be directed by Italy. I found Hitler very well, quite serene, less aggressive. His eyes are deeply wrinkled, his lips very little, always less, and he spends a great part of the night surrounded by collaborators and friends. Frau Goebbels was describing them to me without being able to conceal a vague feeling of boredom on account of their monotony. It is always Hitler who talks. He can be Führer as much as he likes, but he always repeats himself and bores his guests. For the first time, I hear hints in the inner circles of the Führer's tender feelings for a beautiful girl. She is 20 years old with beautiful, quiet eyes and a magnificent body. Her name is Sigrid von Lappus. The ceremony for the signature of the pact was very solemn, and the Führer was sincerely moved. Goering had tears in his eyes when he saw the collar of Annunziata around the neck of Ribbentrop. Von Mackensen told me that Goering had made a scene, complaining that the collar really belonged to him, since he was the true and only promoter of the alliance. I promised Mackensen that I would try to get Goering a collar. June 5th. Serrano Saniar arrives with the Duke of Aosta. He clasps my hand for a long time and repeats words of gratitude for what Italy has done and her way of doing it. He is a slender, sickly man, one of those creatures notable for study and reflection. His bête noire is France. He said that, because he is Spanish, he considers France the eternal enemy of Greater Spain. We touch on many points. War. Spain fears a war in the near future because she is today at the end of her resources. If she can have 2 or 3 years, she can reconstitute herself and complete her military preparations. Spain will be at the side of the Axis because she will be guided by feeling and by reason. A neutral Spain would in any event be destined to a future of poverty and humiliation. Furthermore, Franco's Spain intends to solve the problem of Gibraltar. The youth of Spain lives in the desire and hope of pushing the English into the sea, and it is getting ready to do so. Spain also has accounts to square with France, and these accounts are called Morocco. Relations with Italy. We spoke more pointedly with regard to Germany, especially of the religious question. The anti-Catholic excesses of the Germans offend his sensibilities. August 12th. Hitler speaks, standing in front of a table on which some maps are spread out. He exhibits a profound military knowledge. He speaks with a great deal of calm and becomes excited only when he advises us to give Yugoslavia the coup de grace as soon as possible. I realize immediately that there is no longer anything that can be done. He has decided to strike, and strike he will. He continues to repeat that he will localize the conflict with Poland, but his affirmation that the Great War must be fought while he and the Duce are still young leads me to believe he is acting in bad faith. I feel that as far as the Germans are concerned, an alliance with us means only that the enemy will be obliged to keep a certain number of divisions facing us, thus easing up the situation on the German war fronts. They care for nothing more. The fate that might befall us does not interest them in the least.